Hey cookie creators and lovers alike, I'm Gabby, and today on the Cool Cookie Show, we're making some touchdown football cookies. Let's start by flooding the brown on our football. For my piping consistency icing, I've got a number 1 Ateco Tip, and for my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I've got a number 5 Wilton Tip. Now we'll let this base layer dry for at least 6 to 12 hours before we go in with the white detailing and the piping. To finish up my football, I've gone ahead using my scribing tool to make some markings to help guide my piping. For my piping consistency icing, I'm going to start with the number 1 Ateco Tip and then finish off with the number 1 Wilton Tip. For my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I'll be using a number 3 Wilton Tip. This ball's all done and ready to make some touchdowns. For the helmet, I'll start by flooding the main part with a gray. And before our flooding icing dries, I'll go in and drop in a Royal Icing transfer of the Dallas Cowboys logo. For our piping consistency icing, I'm using a number 1 Ateco Tip, and for my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I'm using a number 4 Wilton Tip. Now we'll take our Royal Icing transfer and drop it into our flooded surface. Now we'll let this layer dry for about 6 to 12 hours before we go in and complete the luster dust and its piping. In order to give our helmet that silver effect, we'll be using some silver luster dust. Using a food-safe brush, add a minimal amount of vodka to your luster dust to get a paint-like consistency. Don't worry about the alcohol in the vodka, as it does evaporate as it dries. Now we'll let our luster dust dry for about 5 minutes before we go in and complete the front part of the helmet. Now with our navy blue piping icing and a number 2 Wilton Tip, let's go in and finish the cage on our helmet. This helmet's all done and ready to get into the action. For our field, I've gone ahead with some food coloring marker and marked some guidelines for our stands and our end zones. As any good Cowboy fan would know, the end zone of their field is navy blue, which is where I'm going to start. For my piping consistency icing, I have a number 1 Ateco Tip, and for my 15-second consistency flooding icing, I'll be using a number 2 Wilton Tip. Now we'll let our end zones dry for about 20 minutes to an hour before we go in and flood the field. Now we'll flood our field with green using a number 1 Ateco Tip for my piping icing and a number 4 Wilton Tip for my 15-second consistency flooding icing. As you can see here, I've also used my food coloring marker to set some points for my yard lines, which I'll add a little bit later. Now before the flooding surface dries, let's go in and add our yard lines using some white icing and a number 1 Wilton Tip. Now once again, before the flooded surface dries, Let's go in with an even smaller Royal Icing transfer of the logo and place it in the center of the field. Now we'll let this surface dry for about 6 to 12 hours before we go in and fill in our crowd. Now let's use some white piping icing and some rainbow sprinkles to fill in our fans in the stands. This cookie's all done and ready to start the game. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Cool Cookie Show. If you liked this episode, give it a big thumbs up. Want to be a part of the creativity? Let me know what characters and shapes you'd like to see in the comments below. For more of my cookie creations, check out my channel, tune in every Tuesday, and don't forget to subscribe. Till next time, stay sweet!